turn it over to you to go ahead and get to the questions for Brodie.
Brodie, your first question this afternoon comes from Steve Gelbs.
Hey, Brodie. I know you guys have been hesitant in the past to give too much information regarding players who contracted the illness, but in this situation, are you willing to reveal which player and coach contracted the virus?
No, Steve, we're not gonna be able to provide any details on the names. What we will do, as you've heard Luis say over the course of the past few weeks, and me as well, we'll not talk about people who are not on site with us. We'll obviously talk about the players on the field who are at the facility, or any players that have specific injuries. But if someone's away from the field for a non-baseball related reason, we won't share any specific details about them.
Okay, and I know that it's probably impossible to nail down, but do you guys have an idea of where and how the virus was contracted?
We don't. I think what we're all learning is that this virus continues to have a lot more questions for us than answers. But we do feel comfortable that the spread has not come from player to player or coach to coach. At this point, our best guess is that it came from some outside spot, but that is simply that. It's a guess, and at this point, we just don't know, and we may never know.
In that situation where I understand you don't have an exact idea, but you feel like it wasn't player to player, is there anything that you need to, or feel like you are going to reinforce or change protocol wise from players when they're away from the field? Or is this something that, like you said, is kind of difficult to just lock down entirely?
Well, going back to the protocols that we set up during summer camp, and then we've continued to follow over the course of the year, we've taken a lot of responsibility, personal responsibility, and respecting one another in terms of our behavior, not only on site, but as we leave the ballpark as well. I feel good about the way in which our players have handled themselves when they leave. Major League Baseball has continued to evolve with their support in us executing the rules that we have, additional monitoring that's taking place not only at the ballpark, but also on the road. So we feel good about what we're doing. And I know that our players take it seriously, and we have a high degree of confidence that this exposure that we received is not as a result of anyone misbehaving or failing to be responsible with their own safety.
Thanks.
Thanks, Steve.
Next question is from Tim Britton.
Hey, Brodie, I don't know if you can get into this, but with the player and the coach, are they symptomatic? Are they asymptomatic? Do you have information on that?
For both people, we're pleased that their symptoms have alleviated. Both ultimately did become symptomatic, but their symptoms have, for the most part, resolved, and the peak of their challenges existed more within about a 36-hour period of time for each of them. So we're feeling much more comfortable about their safety, and while, as I said before, there's so much that remains unknown, our hope is that they're through the worst of it and that they can continue to recover quickly.
And given that someone on staff has it, will there be like a coaching move to get an additional coach in to help replace whoever that is for a brief period of time?
Well, yeah, without question, we're going to have to make sure that we are staffed as an organization, but from players to support staff to coaches as necessary if we are indeed going to be out for any period of time with any one individual, whether it's a positive test or whether it's a close contact or any other reason.
And then just kind of what kind of challenges is a team presented when it has 9 games in 6 days the way you guys now have?
It's a challenge, but this is a year that can't be about excuses. We are not the only team that has faced adversity with scheduling. We're not the only team that's faced adversity with losing players or coaches for a period of time, and everyone has been faced with their own injury challenges. So we can't be looking about what we don't have or what our challenges may be going forward. We got to think about what we do have and find ways to be competitive with the schedule that we're faced with.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Next question is from Tim Healy.
Hey, Brodie. Amid all of this, I don't know if you even got this far mentally, but what do you make of the trade deadline being just a week away?
Yeah, we're juggling a few things right now, all of us in the industry right now, Tim. And, we have begun discussions. We've had a lot of conversations with different teams just about touching base and making sure that we're in contact with teams about, what their interests are, what their priorities may be. So that process is started, but we don't have anything on the horizon at this point.
And from the time Thursday that you guys found out about this and that first game got postponed, what was that experience like to find out about the positive test, to make the decision to come home, to fly on the plane? What was the atmosphere in that kind of chaotic stretch like?
It was sobering. First and foremost, I think everyone was concerned about the health of the two people. We were concerned about, what we needed to do to further test ourselves to make sure that none of the rest of us were sick or were at risk. And then we had all sorts of logistical questions and challenges to make sure we could get people home safely at the appropriate time, continue our testing, and then start to contemplate what the future would look like for our own workouts and schedules. But there were a lot of moving parts, a lot of concerned people and a lot of people that were rallying together to put us in the best situation to stay safe and get back to business as usual.
How many close contacts of the two positives stayed in Miami, and are they still there?
Yeah, we had 4 total close contacts that stayed in Miami, and all 4 are in the process of returning to New York now.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Next question comes from Justin Toscano.
Hey, Brodie, given that you said that you don't believe anyone misbehaved, you're confident in the protocols you guys do have and how you're following them, is it extra scary to know that you can do everything right and something like this can still occur?
I think it reminds us that we're not immune to exposure. And it reminds us that the protocols that Major League Baseball has put in place, the efforts that we've taken as an organization are smart and they're the right ones. When we started back up, I think there was an assumption and an expectation that, baseball was going to have positive cases. And I think that it's a tribute to what has been done, that there have been so few cases, but it's a reminder we're not immune to it. And we have to be smart and careful every day. And we can't let up, because if we are lucky enough to only have 2 cases so far and during this season, and we don't have any more going forward, I think we'll consider ourselves very fortunate and be proud of the protocols that are in place and be proud of our ability to execute them.
And when you guys learn of the news Thursday, how do you communicate that to players? Like what's your message to them just kind of in that moment?
Well, we want to be direct. We want to get them the information as quickly as possible without alarming people, but also being able to give them direction on what we were to do in that moment. And there were a variety of things that we wanted to do immediately, which was further separate players, make sure that we were continuing to keep any risk associated with real-time exposure that we could avoid. And then it was giving them information as quickly as possible to be able to direct them on what we were going to do in the hours and days ahead.
Thank you.
Thanks, Justin.
Next question comes from Bruce Beck.
Brodie, how did Major League Baseball do in handling this crisis in your mind?
We were in total coordination and cooperation with them. For better and for worse, Major League Baseball has had experience, learning about this this system and this virus, and it's that education that they've already received that helped them mobilize us very quickly. And there was never a moment of time where we didn't have ongoing communication, and they were able to help us make the best decisions that were possible at that point in our process here. So we're very pleased with their leadership, and they gave us a roadmap in coordination with our team, with our doctors, and with other medical consultants to make sure we had a safe way home.
Brodie, do you think the Major League Baseball postseason should be conducted in a bubble?
Yeah, it's too early to tell for me. I would defer to Major League Baseball on what the best solutions are there. I'm sure there are a variety of factors, but I hope that and have confidence that we're going to be able to get through this season and hope that the Mets are a part of that postseason tournament.
Thank you.
Next question comes from Tony DeComo.
Hey, Brodie, what is your rotation plan now over the next 6 days?
Yeah, good question. A little to be determined at this point. Our guys were not able to work out at the facility Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We had very few guys were able to work out in Miami on Thursday because the information was coming in right as the guys were about to take the field. So we we're a little bit back into the unknown, similar to what we were prior to summer camp starting, where each player had a little different level of resources available to him when he went home. So we're going to get a better idea. We're having very structured and staggered workouts where one pitcher will be on site, working with Jeremy Hefner at a time, and we'll have a much better handle on where each pitcher is by the end of today to be able to compare and contrast their readiness to pitch tomorrow and thereafter. So once we get that work in and Jeremy and Luis can sit down, then we can try to develop some game plan. But right now, the core focus is getting a handle on where each player's arm care is and making sure that they're in a position to not only perform well, but also, protect themselves physically.
Is your expectation that the two guys on the IL, Waka and Peterson, could come off this week?
I don't know if it's our expectation, Tony, but we're hopeful. That would be great. To Tim's earlier question about the trade deadline, we do feel that we have a number of players that could be trade deadline type acquisitions for us. And, Waka and Peterson are in that conversation, Jake Marisnik as well. When we think about our needs, being able to get some more depth and more talent in the rotation, and to get a right-handed bat that can play multiple outfield positions. We have those guys just on the IL right now, and we felt like in August when we got Hughes and Brad Brock back, along with Gesellman, we got a real boost to our bullpen and the the sustainability of having those arms down there. And it's our hope that when we can get these guys back, we'll have a similar feeling about it.
And also one last one quickly, the two individuals who tested positive, how long do they need to stay in Miami for?
Yeah, that's still unknown at this point. I know they're continuing to be tested every day. We want them to be in a safe spot, recognizing that, they haven't been feeling very, very well over the course of the last 2 days. And we want to make sure that they're feeling up to any travel and of course, making sure that it's safe, not only for them, but for others around them.
Thank you.
Next question comes from Disha Dozar.
Hey, Brodie, does the upcoming pack schedule now make you apprehensive about taxing your pitchers and added injuries? And how do you plan to kind of face that challenge?
Yeah, Disha, I think that's a relevant conversation that we're having. And, part of what we did even leading into this is, our goal is to start to stretch out a couple of guys so that we have more options to be bulk inning pitchers, and whether those bulk inning pitchers start games or whether they're tag teaming to get through 5, 6, 7 innings of a particular game is something that we want to make sure that we were exploring. It's only more important now when we're faced with playing multiple games and multiple double headers in a single week. So that we're going to be creative in terms of how we deploy the guys, but the big picture is the more quality pitchers that we have that can pitch multiple innings in bulk type scenarios is only going to make the rest of our back end of our bullpen that much better.
And then just back to protocols, you touched on it briefly, but is there added emphasis now on players quarantining further when they're away from the ballpark, just to make sure that they complete the season here?
Yeah, well, right now we've been quarantining, here in New York effectively for the last 4 days. The road, we felt like there's been a bubble created every time we go out on the road. It's very, very limited movements for all of us. When we come home, there's always some additional challenges because we go back to our families and our residences, but our behavior doesn't change much. I think we're all trying to follow the same schedule that we do when we're on the road and make sure that we're putting ourselves in as best possible scenario where we don't bring in the virus anywhere else. But all of us are faced with these challenges across the league, and we feel good about, as I said before, the responsibility of the players and staff to do their best to not expose each other.
Did quarantining in New York entail players staying away from their families?
Yeah. So again, I think what we were doing the first few days is wanting to make sure that, the 6 feet and mask rules were being applied at home, as well as not just going outside and exposing them to outside influences. So short version is, yes, the players are being very careful at home with their families to continue to separate, not put themselves in, additional risk.
Thanks.
Next question comes from Andy Martino.
Brodie, I know you probably have to be careful how you answer this and not reveal any identities, but what did you learn about why this didn't become an outbreak beyond the 2 cases? Because really the Mets and the Reds now are the two teams that have had positives and were able to prevent the full-fledged outbreaks like some other clubs have had. And why do you think that happened? Why do you think it remains so limited?
First, we feel very fortunate at this point, and we, whether we're lucky or what the right word is, but we feel fortunate that it hasn't spread any further than those two people. The fact that those two people are exposed is tough. I don't want to underplay the significance of what that means for those two, but from the ability to contain it, I think it goes back to the protocols that baseball's outlined for us and the ability to execute those protocols. We feel proud of the fact that we only had 4 close contacts for these two people, and that alone is going to limit the spread as far as what we know from a science standpoint. And being on airplanes, being on buses, and taking the extra precautions with masks and not eating or drinking and next to each other, there's just a lot of different steps that not only baseball's outlined for us, but what we've tried to follow as well, that have put us in a position where our close contacts are limited, and hopefully the spread is limited as a result of that.
So like in lay terms, the 4 close contacts means that these 2 individuals who were positive, when you did the contact tracing over days, several days, without them knowing they were positive, they only had close contact with 4 other people in the organization?
That's correct. And even within those 4, we went to the abundance of caution to overly consider close contacts. And I think all 4 could arguably be, they probably would like to have not been close contacts, but arguably could have said that they didn't really qualify. But we wanted to be overly careful and cautious so that we could limit this as best as possible.
Thanks.
Thanks, Andy.
Next question comes from Wayne Randazzo.
Hey, Brodie, just to be clear, are the 2 people that tested positive experiencing symptoms, and has it gotten serious enough to consider hospitalization or anything like that?
The latter part of that question is no, they're not experiencing symptoms that would warrant consideration for hospitalization. So both people are effectively resolved from most of their symptoms, and still are feeling not 100% in terms of energy level, but knock on wood, they're through the primary symptoms.
Next question comes from Steve Gelbs.
Hey, Brodie, I have 2 quick ones. When it comes to contact tracing specifics, obviously I could be wrong, but the assumption would be that these 2 individuals outside had some potential close contact with people without masks on in the course of games. When you guys contact trace, is there a emphasis put on close contact indoors versus close contact outdoors, where the virus seems to be less likely to spread?
Yeah, we didn't discriminate between the 2. We wanted to contact trace indoors, outdoors, home, away, you name it. We wanted to make sure that we were exhaustive in considering each of those factors. No, Steve, we wanted to make sure that we were covering both cases.
Okay, and then I know you don't have specific plans when it comes to the rotation, but given the need for starting pitchers, is Steven Matz an option to rejoin the rotation potentially?
As I said before, having pitchers who can cover bulk innings are important to us, and whether that is any one particular pitcher starting the game or whether it's someone coming in after the game, we have to be creative at this point. Call it openers, call it bulk inning pitchers. I have a feeling that we're probably going to be going through a number of different scenarios, not only this week with the number of games that we have, but also as we head towards the rest of the regular season, because we have to treat each game as much of a must-win game as possible, and that's going to require us calling on people that maybe we haven't called on before, or asking people to perform roles that they maybe haven't done before. And I think that's the way we would envision Steve. He may well need to be a starter that we count on, but I know he's going to be a pitcher that we're going to want to count on, and so that's something that won't change. And our expectation is that we'll try to keep him stretched out as much as possible to fill either role.
Next question comes from Tim Britton.
Who does the contract tracing? Who's responsible for doing the legwork on that?
Yeah, a combination of a lot of people. That Major League Baseball has an investigative process that they conduct. Our medical team has a process where multiple people are reaching out to identify the contact tracing, and it goes all the way down to myself in terms of things that I have seen or witnessed, and then our players helping to self-police themselves, wanting to make sure that memories can sometimes be tough. So the more people that we can involve in identifying these close contacts is important, because you don't want to miss anyone, and having everybody collectively try to work together was important, at least from the way we handled it.
And then those 4 people that stayed in Miami a little bit longer, how are they getting back to New York? I've seen other teams, they've been driving back. How are those guys getting back?
Yeah, I won't go into the details of their travel plans, but we're keeping them socially distanced, and we're trying to put them in a scenario where not only are they safe from others, within their traveling party, but also, not putting themselves in any additional risk as well. So they're working their way back, and our hope is that they can, get back here at some point tonight.
And then last one, with the Yankees being in the same town as you, was there any consideration to playing one of this weekend's doubleheaders at Citi Field to kind of even the home road balance there at all?
Yeah, we worked with Major League Baseball on the scheduling, and the way it worked out in Major League Baseball's ultimate, as you saw, the scheduling of the games, we're going to have 5 of those games at their ballpark. But we'd always like to play every game at home, whether it's this series or any other. But we're prepared, and we're going to get 2 of those games this weekend where we're the home team, and so we've got to be prepared to play everywhere, and that's going to be our focus, and not worry about whether it's at Citi Field or at Yankee Stadium or any of our other road games.
Do you know which 2 you will be the home team yet?
Which 2 of the games, as far as first
like
or second game of that particular day, I don't.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Next question comes from Dan Martin.
Brodie, you talked a little bit about the conversations you guys were having about the upcoming trade deadline. And I was wondering how the uncertainty of this season might be impacting your approach to the deadline, just because you don't know from one day to the next who's available. And like you even said before the postseason, you hope baseball gets there. So how does that weigh on you?
It weighs in a variety of different ways. I think first and foremost, we experienced, just even with these 2 positive tests, how quickly needs might change, or players or coaches or roles might need to be filled. Add on to that the inevitable injuries that guys face on a daily basis. So there's always going to be a lot of transactions that take place that are unexpected. And so there's first and foremost, what are our needs as a team at any point in time could change quickly between now and the end of the month and the August 31st trade deadline. The other factors that we have to consider are, short-term upside to the roster, longer-term control for players that could help over multiple years, and then ultimately what the acquisition costs are for each of those different situations. We're going to be very careful. I think that the aggressive approach that we've taken in the past is not something that we will eliminate from a possibility, but we recognize we've got a 30-game season effectively, and less than that once the trade deadline comes and goes. And so we have to be responsible for the future of the organization while still being opportunistic for ways to improve the club. But I wouldn't see a rental player for us or anybody else commanding a huge return in terms of prospects. And I think teams will be more conservative overall, but we haven't necessarily identified what the marketplace is for the short-term players. And I know the longer term players every year that a player has a control, or the higher impact that player is going to create a higher acquisition cost. So we'll blend all of those factors and ultimately try to make moves that fit our goals. But we're not going to feel like we're in tremendous pressure to make a move just for the sake of making a move. We feel like we've got some depth on the team. We feel like we've got some guys returning to health that can help us. And if there's something to do in the short term that gives us some degree of upgrade over a particular position, then we'll look to do it. But we're not going to do it at the sacrifice of our long-term goals.
Next question comes from Mike Vaccaro.
Hey, Brodie, I'm curious what your reaction was when you first heard about Major League Baseball's move to 7-inning doubleheaders, and if that's changed at all by the fact that you're obviously going to be inundated by them now, and what that means to you in terms of whether it's a good thing, bad thing. I assume you think it's a good thing now, but I'm curious how that has evolved in your way of thinking.
Yeah, well, I think all of us that have spent any time in baseball like the tradition of the game and feel that there's some value in having some consistency from year to year and game to game. At the same point, I think we all recognize that this season was going to be bringing new challenges and have to look at things in different ways, primarily for the health and safety of the players. And so the rule changes that were put in place, I was in favor of. And then once the 7-inning games came into effect and we started seeing the challenges that baseball and individual teams were facing with so many games in a short period of time, it seemed to make sense. Now, as we look at it from a personal standpoint, I think it's a necessity. Trying to cover so many games in so many few days, or such few days, it's a challenge for everybody, and not just us because we're playing the games, but our opponents who are faced with the similar structure. So right now we're in a position where we only have 4 games to make up. And, that may change as time goes on. We know we're not going to be playing, fewer games as we go. We know it's only going to be, more challenges. But right now, the 7-inning games give us a chance to at least start to map out what we could potentially do in terms of pitching over the course of these days.
Thank you. Next question comes from Tim Healy.
Just to follow up on the contact tracing questions, you mentioned that in an abundance of caution, the bar was sort of lowered in terms of what was deemed close contact. What was the standard used for that?
Yeah, I think publicly, the general rule of thumb is stay 6 feet away for less than, or don't be within 6 feet for less than 15 minutes. I'm sorry, for more than 15 minutes.
Right.
But we've always taken the approach from the beginning of summer camp that, if we can be more than 6 feet away, let's do it. And so anytime real estate allows for us, or square footage allows for us to be farther apart than that, we encourage our players and staff to do so, and definitely want to limit, our time to far less than 15 minutes and only keep, multiple minutes of contact to a rare minimum based on circumstances. So we took that approach, and we kind of built from there.
So in deciding who was a close contact in this scenario Thursday, was it 10 minutes within 6 feet, 5 minutes?
Yeah, Tim, I'm not going to get into the specific details of it, but we did not have anyone that was in contact with one another within 6 feet for longer than 15 minutes. But we wanted to make sure that we were capturing everybody that possibly could be dangerous.
Thank you.
Brodie, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thanks, everybody. Stay safe. Look forward to getting back and playing games.